How we doing? Well, thanks for joining us today. I want to get started on time, so I'm just going to jump right in. But as we go through this webinar, please interrupt me with questions. We've got that chat window right there. So if you want to fire off any questions and, sort of, ask anything you want, we'll make this pretty informal, right? So anyway, feel free to chime in. So what are we talking about today? We're talking about AFrame CRM. Most people who use AFrame sort of know it as a transaction management platform, which it is, but there's also this really powerful piece to A-Frame, and a lot of people are not using it. So today we want to really take a deep dive into A-Frame CRM, and then also, really see how you can leverage it to grow your business, because that's really kind of the point, I think, at the end of the day. So I've got a couple slides. We're going to get into a demo here in a second, but I do have a couple little data points that I want to talk about. So look, if you're not using your CRM, it is costing you, right? You've got this acres of diamonds, as they call it, just sitting there waiting to be tapped. And if you are completely focused on the transaction coordinator side, and I realize our audience today is both agent and TC, so you'll kind of see me jump back and forth to that. But if you're a transaction coordinator, typically your head's down. A lot of you guys are introverts in a way, maybe myself included. But you have to think about working your CRM and using the word prospecting, which we'll cover here later. If you're an agent, you know that prospecting is basically your lifeline, and if you're not doing that, you're not going to be growing. So your contacts equal your growth potential. Now, a list of contacts is just that. It's just a list. So you have to work your list in a way that's consistent. Hopefully you're reaching out to them at least at some point. But the consistency, a lot of times, is key. So we're going to talk about how A-Frame can do that for you. And then last but not least, we've got, you need to use your CRM correctly. So that's what we're going to talk about. How can you really use your A-Frame CRM and be organized, especially as your contact database grows, right? So let's kind of jump right in with the basics. You've got to gather your contacts. Everybody knows this. Where are your contacts now? Are they in a spreadsheet? Are they in a bunch of different, CRM-like products? Are they, if you have a team, are they spread out between, your different people and just your iPhone or, maybe your Google Contact deal? I would challenge you guys to really make the effort to gather those contacts in one place. And contacts from an agent perspective, obviously, are your sphere or center of influence. And those are people who will give you referrals or will do business with you, at some point. For TCs, a lot of times that's agents, right? So do you have a list of agents in your marketplace that you would consider reaching out to? Those are the people you have to gather, and you need emails and phone numbers. Okay. We've got an import area, and I'll show you that here in a second. Once you gather all of those people, A-Frame does make it pretty easy to import all of those contacts using a CSV file, a spreadsheet. So here's an example of what that looks like. I'm just in the import area of A-Frame, but I just downloaded this sample CSV file, and this is your basic information: names, phone numbers, spouse names, phone numbers, and also, by the way, spouse in A-Frame also really is alternate contact, right? So you could have the assistant, of a title company or escrow company as well. And I'll kind of get into this a little bit later on categories, but when you import this information into A-Frame, you really want to take the time to look at your list, your spreadsheet, and get that data in. I'd say make it correct before you do the import, right? So get your categories correct. You can actually import categories at the same time that you import. You can, do birthdays and anniversaries if you want to track that information, but really take the time to get your spreadsheet right if it's coming from other sources, and then go ahead and import. A-Frame does offer, a service. Well, I wouldn't call it a service, but I'd say if you get your spreadsheet together and you're questionable about how the data looks, send it to us at support@aframesoftware.com. We'll take a look at it. We'll make sure the columns are correct. We'll offer any tips and guidance on how you can improve the spreadsheet prior to importing it. And we're actually happy to import the file for you, just so everything sort of goes off without a hitch. So that's one of the services we definitely offer, and we will we'll certainly be glad to do that for you. So again, the basics: get your people, put them in a spreadsheet, get them in AFrame. And also, when you import an AFrame, we'll talk about this in a second, is ownership's important if you have a team, right? So as you import people, you actually have the option, one of those columns is owners, and you can set the ownership when you do the import as well. Okay, so we brought up categories, and this is pretty basic, but a lot of people don't take the time to do this. And honestly, there's really only one category you need, and I think that's sphere of influence, or we call it sphere in AFrame. At least there's a default category there for you. So when you put a contact in AFrame, you import contacts into AFrame, you absolutely want to add a category. Now, where do you do that? So if I'm going to pop into AFrame, and I'm going to pick on an existing contact, but this could very well be a brand new contact that I'm adding. There's always a field here called categories, wherever you're inputting a contact, whether it be in a transaction or here at the contact detail screen. You can put in as many categories as you want. You can make up, I can just say my custom category, and the minute I click save, it will go ahead and add that category. So for agents, sphere of influence, center of influence is a very common phrase. For TCs, it might not be as familiar, but you could have, a category that you make up, which is potential agent client, for example. And these would be obviously those contacts that eventually you want to reach out to in some way. So the categorization is key. That is at the most basic level what you have to do with your contacts. Because if you look at a count like this has, I think, over 8,000 contacts in it, which is fine. AFrame can handle 20,000 contacts, but you can't handle filtering through 20,000 contacts to get to your core list. And the way you do that in AFrame is through categories. So if I go to advanced search and I want to look up all my sphere people, of those 8,000, you'll notice that 1,500 really means something to me. And so that's where categories obviously come into, or you can start to leverage your contacts in that way and leverage the search in that way. And you can certainly add a lot more categories. I would challenge you guys to get creative with how you slice and dice your contact list. So again, we've got, get your data in, start to categorize all of your contacts. One little note, and I see a lot of people do this, is they will put contacts in, or they'll put categories, assign categories to contacts with statuses that change, like buyer or seller. I would argue you would not do that. AFrame already, when you do a search, especially an advanced search, it already knows who buyers and sellers are. By the very nature of when you enter a transaction, it ties it all together. And I'll demonstrate that later, how you can do some pretty cool searches in that regard. But ultimately, if the category is constantly changing, or they can be both, usually you do not want to categorize your contacts as such. Clearly, the benefits are you can search with ease, you can bring up different sections of contacts easily. And why that's important is because you can export those very easily. You can send them off to a batch email, or you can use our prospecting area. So let me go in real quick while I'm talking about it. And I'd like to show you how you can mass categorize your contacts, because some people might say, well, I've already got all these people in there. I don't want to go through all of these one by one. So what you could do is, depending on the number of contacts that you've got in there, you could search for all of them. And we do have some tools here on the main search area. You can select individual ones, and you can click edit and then add and remove categories. Or you could literally add and remove categories to the entire list. So if you'll notice here, I'll check off 2. I can add and remove categories, and I have the option to add a category or make up a new category here at the bottom. And then at the very last, I have the option to select, okay, I only want to change 2 of these contacts that I've selected, or I want to change all 8,300. And I want to add them all to, let's say, this category, and maybe some other category down here. By the way, you can see how many categories we have in this particular account. And obviously that's on purpose because we can slice and dice our list however we want. So that's a great tool, especially if you have your contacts in and you really need to figure out, okay, now I want to categorize everything. What's the most efficient way to do that? So that's a great way to do that. Another thing I'll point out in regards to categories, because I want to kind of give you a real rounded picture on how you can manage all this. If I go into the admin area, there's an area called lists. And this is where you can actually get a page of all of your categories in the system and also how many contacts are assigned to those different categories. So if you've got a bit of a hot mess of contacts and categories in your system, some people do. You've just worked on a database or you've been in AFrame for years, then you can use this to, number one, see what categories are in use. And then we also have some options over here to actually merge or rename categories. So if, like, for example, we've got, lender and then lenders, plural. We might go on to one of them and say merge and rename, and then we would select the lenders, right? And then we would merge those together to help clean up your list. So there's a huge amount well, I'll just say this. This is a big tool to help you manage all of your categories if you've already got existing ones present. So, okay, so let's jump back in. So we talked about, again, categories are your friend, embrace them and use them to your heart's content. And then obviously we talked about a number of the tools that you can use to, set all your categories and manage that.
We have a question.
Yes, please go. Thank you, Morgan, for interrupting me.
She said, how would you categorize co-op agents you've already added as a contact?
Great question. And okay, you can absolutely do that, number one. So if you're in on a transaction, and let's say you're adding an agent on the other side, as we call it. Now, these are roles, participant roles, so obviously they're different from categories. But let's say I'm entering, like in my system, we use this role agent on the other side. So this is not my particular agent, but let's say I'm using this participant role and I want to enter in, agent other side. So when I put that in, you have the ability to put your categories. And I honestly would put in potential agent client. You can make up anything you want, but potential agent client signifies, hey, I'm putting this person in and I think they have potential to be, one of my clients, then I would just make up your own category. So there's no hard, fast rule for that, but that's a good way to do it. Oh, even better question. So Ashley, okay, so what she asked here is, how do you mass categorize all of your people on the other side? So this was actually what I wanted to talk about as well, which is potential agent client or agent on the other side. Well, okay, let's just jump into it. So if I go to advanced search and I want to look up all of my contacts that I have in the system that were on the other side of the transaction, you've got this ability to filter by roles. So if I come in here and say, okay, I want to see all of my agent on the other side people, I can do that, certainly perform that search. So I've got 677 people that were on the other side of the transaction. These are not necessarily your team members. In fact, most of these probably wouldn't be because you don't usually set your managed agents as agent on the other side, for example. So most likely that's going to be the perfect list that you're looking for. And then at that point, you could, categorize all those using that method I just mentioned earlier, which is edit, categorize, and you can categorize the entire search results. Something that actually can be a lot more beneficial is since we tie transactions and contacts together, you can actually keep this search agent on the other side. And maybe you're like, okay, well, wait, I also have another category like maybe lender on the other side, or maybe you say agent one, agent two on the roles. You might select both of those. You might check them all off so they all appear on this list. The other thing you can do is tie these together. So you can say, okay, I also only want to categorize the people that are agents on the other side, but I've closed deals with. And let's say for the last 2 years, right? So we'll just do like 2023 enclosed, and I won't even worry about the two. So what does this give me? This gives me all of my agents on the other side, all of my lenders on the other side that I've closed deals with since 2023. And now I've got this list of 136 people. So this list can be exported. You can obviously edit these and add a bunch, add a custom category like my current list or my potential agent clients, what have you. But you can do a lot of things with these search results. Um, well, let's just get into it. So we can first export. So if I want to export this list and send this to my marketing firm, for example, and they want to, do something very custom and very special with this list, you've got all of the information here with phone numbers, emails, addresses. I mean, you name it. It's here. You can send it to any program, any advertising shop, anything that you want to do with that list. This is obviously the most flexible thing you can do with a list of contacts. The other thing that you can do with the search results is send a batch email. So, we've got integration with SendGrid. In order for this to work, you do need to have a SendGrid account. It's pretty inexpensive. It's separate. You don't go through us for that. But once you set up your SendGrid account, you can marry the two, and our batch email feature comes into play. And this enables you to send, a marketing email to, in this case, 136 people. It'll be from your email. You can send it to, you can use all kinds of merge fields. And then the nice thing about sending this through AFrame rather than sending it through, let's say, Constant Contact or MailChimp, is that all of these are actually stored underneath the contacts. So when I send these underneath John and Jane Doe, it'll actually have a record of it under the email tab, which is pretty nice. But you certainly don't have to do this. You can use that Excel spreadsheet and import it to Constant Contact, MailChimp, you name it. So good question, Ashley. How can you schedule? When you click preview, let me type a little test subject. I believe you can schedule it. Yes. So you can schedule a batch email to go out. So that's how you would do that. You just got to get to the last screen before you send. So yeah. Okay, so those are great questions. We've covered actually a lot of ground with that, right? Searching contacts, slicing them up by category, exporting those, or sending them through our batch email feature. But if you're doing any of those in practice, I think you're really leveraging your contacts. Okay, let's see what I have missed. Oh, okay. So task templates. Everybody who uses AFrame, well, almost everybody, 99% of people use task templates for transactions. Task templates can be applied to contacts, and this can be a huge leg up, especially when you're trying to keep track of, let's say 10 to 50 people that you might be working in some way. And so if you look at, obviously, task templates for contacts, this will help you automate your follow-up and your prospecting. So obvious applications for this. Agents, if you have a new buyer or new seller and you want to work them within AFrame, or even it's potentially, an old client that says, hey, I'm thinking about selling in the future, you might add them to a follow-up plan, a 90-day follow-up plan. And, John Doe said, I might be selling, why don't you reach out to me? You could certainly add a single task. In fact, let's just look at that real quick. So if I'm sitting in my database and I'm talking with John or Jane Doe, and they said, hey, why don't I'm thinking about selling, but, not right now, but I might be in the future. But great to talk to you, whatever. You can come in here under tasks, under a contact, and use one of those templates. And again, if you're not, I know you're familiar with our templates, but you can create all of these from scratch. So we have a couple in here that are preset, but you can certainly make up these from scratch and do whatever you like. But we've got a couple in here as an example, agent 30-day prospecting or for the buyer or seller. Let's just say this is a potential seller. We click apply. And now we have a very simple schedule. First touch might be an email. The second touch is a call. And then the third and fourth touch are another email. And of course, you have emails tied to those if you want. You don't have to have these templates. You might just need, sort of the memory jog to say, oh, I need to reach out to them via email, and just go ahead and type a custom email, right? So the idea, if you're not using these contact task templates, you really should think carefully about, okay, would this benefit me? How would I use this? And how would I make sure I'm reaching out to all of my clients? Um, TCs. So you're not reaching out to buyers and sellers, but you certainly are potentially reaching out to other agents. And this is sort of what we talked about with Ashley as she asked the question, okay, how do I categorize my agents on the other side? But the task templates, the contact task templates can really be a huge sort of time saver, or at least to keep you very organized on who you're reaching out to. And so what would that 90-day touch plan look like for you guys? So you could have within your transaction, like the very last task of your transaction task template to say, apply agent on the other side contact template. And when that comes up, you could decide, okay, did I like this agent on the other side? Or, would this be somebody I'd want to work with? And if it is, you might come into their particular contact and say, hey, I'm going to go ahead and apply my TC capture the agent on the other side plan. And this again is, first touch. What would this email look like? On ours, we have, look, it was a pleasure working with you on my last transaction. I notice you're not currently using a transaction coordinator. I'd love the chance to show you how I work and how I can support your business, et cetera, et cetera. This is a layup email for every TC in the business. If you're not doing this, you're making a huge mistake, especially if you like the way that agent worked and they don't have a TC. You'd be a fool not to implement that into your workflow, right? And so we've got a number of other deals, a call, obviously a 21-day touch, and then a final touch. And these emails are different. But ultimately, that is like low-hanging fruit for you guys. So please consider, putting that into your transactional workflow. More low-hanging fruit. This is contact touch dates. So this is yet another sort of tool inside AFrame's CRM arsenal that you can use. And where are contact touch dates stored? So they are on the contact details screen. If you're not familiar, this is what we've been talking about here. And you'll notice all these tabs down here. One of them is touch dates, where you can enter in any sort of anniversary, right? So we actually have 4 listed here. Those are sort of the standard ones, I think that are automatically in most people's systems. But so, clearly I can come in here and set the birth date. And you can do that for the spouse, the main contact. We've got wedding anniversary, purchase anniversary. Let's see, we've got purchase, sale, wedding. We've got child touch dates. But if you want to add additional touch dates for whatever reason, you can do that in the admin area. Let me just show you that real quick. So I'm in the admin area now, and now I'm going to go back to that lists area that we talked about. That's where those categories are. And you'll notice up here, there's another section. There's actually, several little areas you can modify lists in AFrame, but one of them is touch dates. And this works in a very similar way of categories. You can add another touch date that you might want to track. So anyway, if you don't see the current touch date that you want to track, go ahead and add it. And then it will be available to you on any of the contacts when you enter them here. Now, how do you hear about touch dates, right? Like, okay, I've entered in his birthday. Clearly, they could be in your calendar or whatnot. But this, if you enter these in on a contact within AFrame, you should be getting those daily summary emails. Well, part of those daily summary emails is it will say, do I have any contact touch dates coming up? And those emails will have birthday anniversary, purchase anniversary, what have you, in those emails to jog your memory to, oh, maybe I want to reach out to John today. It's his birthday. Of course, birthdays everybody knows, but maybe you have their wedding anniversary because when you worked with them when you were closing. And you certainly know their purchase or sale anniversaries. Usually purchase anniversaries are more exciting. Most people don't care when they sold their house. But these are tools you can obviously set, and then they will be entered in any of the emails that you receive on a daily basis. Now, how AFrame sort of dissects everything, you might be thinking, wait, I've got a team. I've got like 5 agents running around, or I've got 6 TCs. I don't want to be reminded of everybody's birthdays or touch dates. Well, AFrame sort of knows which touch dates to notify you of through ownership, right? So if you have a bunch of people who own this particular contact, all of us will be reminded of this particular person's anniversary. Typically, you're going to have just one person owning the contact. So again, ownership can be important when we start talking about touch dates, getting notified about certain things, and definitely when we start talking about the prospecting area, which we'll get to here in a second. Okay, so let's jump back in.
We have a question.
Please. Yeah.
Well, it's two questions, but saying the same thing. They're talking about the contact prospecting type
Oh, the
template.
templates?
They want to know if it comes standard or if they need to create
Yes.
it.
Okay. No, but we just created these. So they're like brand new because we were going to do this talk. And now we have I think we have three, very simple, but I think very effective templates. So what we'll do is we'll actually post that XML file on Facebook, and eventually we will get all of those added to AFrame itself so they're available. But we'll post something to get those to you so you can have access to them. Pretty much there's three of them. There's a 90-day follow-up for buyers, there's a 90-day follow-up for sellers, and then there's a TC, capture the agent on the other side template. So we'll get those out to you guys, and we'll give you instructions on how you import them. It's pretty easy. So good question. Okay, so we talked about touch dates, sort of how all of that works. And it's just super easy, right? Birthday comes up, purchase anniversary. Hey, just was thinking about you. If you need anything, if you know of any other agents who might need my services, let me know. Easy. Okay, so now we want to get into our prospecting area. You guys have probably seen this little button over here on the left menu, and you've either clicked it once, just immediately like left, or you just thought, I don't know what that is. I'm not going to worry about it. So I'm going to get into this in a second, but this is AFrame's solution to working your contact lists in a systematic and efficient way. So once we dive in, you're going to see a couple things. The prospecting area offers an auto prospecting feature. And what that does is it sort of combines contact ownership with relationship ratings. I'll show you where you set that here in a second. And then it basically sorts that entire list by the last time you talked to that client, and then factors in the relationship rating. And so what it essentially does is allow you to work your list. Let's say one day you want to call, a lot of people want to call 10 to 15 people a day or reach out. You might not have time. You might say, once a week, I want to prospect, and you have time to call or email 10 folks that day. Well, you can go away, come back a week later, and AFrame is right there with you where you left off. And so if you don't have a tool like that, a lot of times you have to manually figure out where you were, or write down a name and make sure the list that you had searched for is in the right sort order, because et cetera, et cetera. But I'll show you how this works. So as you start to prospect people and you think, hey, this is working for me, the prospecting area, I think, is going to be extremely helpful for you. So you can also do a manual sort of method. I'll show you that here in a second. And then I'll talk to you a little bit about setting goals if that's something that motivates you. So, okay, here we are in the prospecting area. And it looks pretty busy. There is a lot going on here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, see if we can't get a better view of this. I'll just kind of break it down. So at the top, as we start to reach out to people, we actually have a goal area up here. So how many people have I contacted today? And what is my goal? My goal, which is set up in the system, is 10 contacts per day. How many do I want to contact weekly? 50. And then I also have a goal of adding 2 contacts per week. So these are just goals that you can set. If you don't set the goals, it's fine. It'll just kind of be blank up here. But that's kind of a neat way. So I'll show you as we do stuff, it will start to track the progress up top. Over on the left, this is our auto prospecting list. So this is a list of contacts that are sorted in the order that they should be sorted in, right? Last prospected date in reverse order. And it also combines the relationship rating as well. So let's go into a contact first, and I'll show you where we can set all of these deals. So I'm going to zoom back out just so the rating comes up. So here's where you set the relationship rating. So again, auto prospect. This is what this really comes down to, is auto prospecting. So the relationship rating, this is sort of a Brian Buffini thing if you're an agent and you're familiar with that. But you can set somebody as A, B, C, D, or basically, I don't really care about this person from a prospecting perspective. So most people, I just want to be on, the list, which is a C. And you'll notice this has an auto prospect of every 90 days. If I set it to B, for example, this is auto prospect every 60 days. And what that just means is this contact will come up in your list at least every 60 days. Or sorry, at most every 60 days. And so if I change it back to C, John Doe is only going to come up in that list 90 days after I've contacted them. So it really helps you maintain sort of that consistency, and you're not seeing John Doe all the time. You're just seeing John Doe when you need to see him. The other thing that's important about auto prospecting is ownership. Talked a little bit about ownership when it comes to contact touch dates. But if you want auto prospecting to work for you, you've got to set the relationship, and then you've got to set who owns that particular contact. And so that's how the prospecting engine works. It essentially says, okay, Burton's in the prospecting area. What contacts does Burton own that have a relationship rating of A, B, C, or D? And then we're going to sort that list and present it to them. So that's how that works. So now that I'm going to go back to the prospecting area. And now that you know that, hopefully this will make a little bit more sense of how this list got generated in the first place. So here's how this works. You've got your list over here on the right or on the left. If I click one, it'll obviously come up. I could call that person and then say, hey, talked with Tim. He's not looking for a new TC at this point, but he wanted me to follow up in 30 days or 60 days. I could take that note, right? Or if I left him a voicemail, I could log that. And it tracks down here my activity. So as that activity gets tracked, AFrame knows, okay, you talked with Tim today. He's not going to come up for another 90 days. And so that's the key on telling AFrame when your last prospecting activity was. And then if there's a follow-up that needs to be done, you can simply come in here and say, you know what, I want to follow up with him in a month. Follow-up call, you can click save, or you could say, talk about new business, whatever, and then go ahead and save that. And now you're moving on to the next person. And then you'll start to see your goal progress, progress up top. And so that's how that works. Okay, so this is the auto list, but you might say, you know what, I don't want to worry about all this, relationship rating, the whole bit. I really just want to call my potential agent clients because I've set all those categories up. How do I do that? So we can do an advanced search. And this is very simple, right? I just search for all potential agent clients. I don't know if I have any categorized by that. I have one. Okay, well, let's use this for example, one. I could come in here and say, I want to connect with this list. And this could be 500 people if you have them categorized. And I could say, I want to prospect these contacts. And now you'll notice that this list over on the left is just the search that I created. Now, the nice thing is when you use this method to prospect this list, if I talked with Priscilla and she, was interested in my business or not, what have you, let's just say I logged that prospecting call. If I go back to this list later, she's going to be at the bottom because it sorts by the last prospecting date in descending order, right? So again, even if you're doing this manually, the prospecting sort of area really comes in handy for doing that. A couple of the little features here. Obviously, you can make the call. You can actually fire off an email from right here. It just uses, AFrame's email feature that you're all familiar with. If you write them a letter, you could, log this as a letter, but some people like to write handwritten letters. If you're one of those, you certainly can log that activity. And then if you actually had an in-person deal, this probably didn't make sense for this page, but you do have the opportunity to log an in-person meeting or prospecting meeting with that particular person. So you're welcome to do that as well. Okay, so let's look at, there's
Yeah.
another question. I see that. Ashley, you're asking great questions today. Um,
Sorry.
so yeah,
I just know
uh,
what I'm looking for and I know what I want and I know what I need. And this is a great class. This is truly needed. So thank you.
good, good. Okay, so can your prospecting timeline coincide with the task template's due dates? So you may have noticed that if I go into the prospecting page and I go back to auto prospecting, you may have noticed this first entry, it's actually a task, right? So the prospecting engine understands that you might have separate tasks out there that are labeled as a prospecting task, and they need to come up in this list because you don't want to forget about them. So if I'm in John Doe's, particular contact, in fact, let's just go to John's. I'm going to open this in a new tab. You'll notice that I made a bunch of tasks that I need to follow up with John about. And these are all prospecting tasks. You can see that, designated by this little bag of money. So if there is a prospecting task with this contact and obviously signed to me, if I go to my prospecting area, then it's going to come up in that list. So I don't know if there's actually a number of days that coincide with the template, but this sort of solves the problem for you. If the task is necessary for today or in the past because it's overdue, you're going to see it here and you're going to be able to take care of it. And so you'll notice over here, this is a little different. Instead of seeing like the email, call, and what have you, you're going to click this and say, okay, did I talk? Did I do this? Did I reach out? If you completed that task, you can go ahead and complete it here and be done. So yes, great question.
So I
Um,
guess what I'm asking too is, so in that prospecting list, yeah, you're seeing the prospecting task, but if
mhm,
you went into the prospecting timeline, like the A, B, and C, and it was like every 90 days, 60 days, 30 days,
mhm.
like, okay, yeah, I have got the 30-day task now, but let's just say a week from now, I've got category A or B or the 60-day or the 90-day mark like coming up or whatever the case may be. Like, will I know, hey, you already contacted them the week before. You don't need to do it again. Like, so you can ignore this notification. Does that make
So
sense?
it kind of does. The way A-Frame works is it's all based on what contact activity you log or contact tasks that you complete that is a prospecting task or activity. So just to kind of show you that again, if I look at John Doe, I have tasks, but I can also add a note, right? So, and you'll see them here. So I have tasks and notes. If I create a note, like let's say I talked to John randomly because he called me or something, or I called him randomly because I wanted to reach out, I could say, talk to him about, um, something. And I log that as a prospecting activity. It resets the auto prospecting to say, okay, John's new last prospecting time is actually today. And so the next time he'll come up will be whatever you set, 90 days, 60 days, 30 days, whatever. Now, tasks are a little different. So that's auto prospecting, right? Tasks will also reset the last prospect date. So if I complete like first touch today, then that sets the last prospecting date. And so A-Frame knows from an auto prospecting perspective, John's not going to come back up to my list in another 90 days, assuming he's at a C rating. Now, I will say this, if the next task is in 15 days, that task is still going to come up. And there's a reason for that. The auto prospecting is nice, but if you have a task that really means something, like I need to follow up with this person, we don't want to assume that that task has been taken care of just because you happened to talk to John last week, right? So the short answer is yes. AFrame tracks when is the last time you talk to them, but tasks do take precedence. If there is one that needs to be doing, then the prospecting engine is going to tell you to do it. So
Okay, that's
hopefully,
exactly what I was kind of looking for, and that makes perfect sense, and I love that. So thank you.
good, cool. Um, okay, so Alicia had a question. How do you have to manually change their rating? So obviously you can change it manually, right? Save. But like categories, we actually offer some pretty cool tools to get your ratings up to speed quickly. So I'm going to go back to the prospecting area. You'll notice here I'm back in prospecting. And there's actually some other activities or some other options up here. One is activity, one is contact ratings, and then I've got another one called statistics, which will run some statistics and different things. Um, the contact ratings is where if you want to do sort of some mass settings in regards to contact ratings, then this is where you would want to do that. And this page is pretty neat. What it ends up doing is it says, okay, I'm looking at your database right now, and of all of the contacts that you own, this is important, these are contacts that you are an owner of. So if you have a team, by the way, when you add a contact, AFrame automatically adds you as the owner. It adds the person who's adding the contact as the owner. So many of you won't have to do a thing. But if you do have a team, and let's say you've got an assistant somewhere who always adds every contact, you may not be the owner of those contacts. So again, you want to make sure you're the owner of all those contacts. And there's places where you can set that very easily. I'll show you that here in a second. But this page is a breakdown of all of your contacts and then their contact ratings. You can see here, I actually in this system have 488 contacts that I own or am an owner of. And then it breaks it down. What I can do in here is essentially look at all of these contacts, and I could just come through here and start rating them manually if I wanted to, right? Or if I'm not worried about that and I just want to say, you know what, I just want to change it for all 88, then you can do that here. The other way to do this is simply do a search. So let's say I want to search for all of my Spear people. Or let's say something different. Let's say I want to search for all of my agents on the other side, and look at those. So we've got 677 of those. I could come here and do edit, and we talked about categories before. There's another one called change relationship ratings. So this is where I could change everybody to a C. And Alicia, that's probably the easiest path. The other thing you can do here is change ownership. So if you want to make sure that you're an owner of all 677 of these people, then you can come in here, select your name, and you would click add. You can also replace. So that basically would remove everybody and set you as the owner. Again, if you're in a team environment, that would make sense. But the add is obviously, non-breaking. It's usually the right way to go on ownership is either add or remove. So those are the two steps you might take there, which is perform the search, get all the contacts that you want to change the rating for, and then go ahead and use that batch edit feature in the search results. So great question. Okay, so let's talk about setting goals. So we've covered a lot of ground here, and I know we've covered it quickly, but let's talk about up top. I think it's fun to set goals. I think especially as you're making progress, once these little bars turn green, just feels nice. So we'll go ahead and click this edit goals area. And I'll preface this by saying that this goal sheet is really geared towards agents more than TCs. However, this will work great from a prospecting situation. And where you really want to focus if you're a TC is down here in the weekly prospecting goals, right? And again, how many contacts does it take to make a sale? That might be irrelevant for you. So you could just leave it at 50. But really, how many contacts do you want to call a week? And then how many database additions do you think you might want to do a week. These are, some goals that you can set. And so most likely you just want to worry about these two columns when it comes to setting goals for TCs. For agents, you might look at this whole thing, but usually these don't really apply to the prospecting area per se. So, that's the place where you can change those particular goals, and then they'll either change here or change here or change here, right? So anyway, that's where you do that. Okay, we covered prospecting. This is a topic we've pretty much already covered, right? Smart search. So again, because AFrame sort of links transactions to contacts, you can really do some cool searches. And one of them we've literally already talked about. How do you search for the agent on the other side for all the deals that you closed within the last couple of years? And I'll just reiterate that real quick because it's pretty easy to do. So again, I'll go into advanced search. I'll go into the roles and say, okay, I want all the contacts who had the agent on the other side role. And then I want to say, okay, I want to see all the transactions that successfully closed and were, done from 2023 onward. And I'll search contacts. And again, that brings up 135 people who were the agent on the other side. I successfully closed a transaction for them in the last 2 years, 2.5. So that's how these smart lists, can really be helpful for you to dissect your list. And so my last comment here is I just kind of challenge you guys to get creative on, okay, how do I want to dissect my list? Who do I want to talk to? Do I want to talk to agents that I've, helped sell deals in this particular town or zip code or street even? And the same is true for agents, right? So if you're an agent trying to figure out, okay, who do I want to market to maybe potentially this next month? You might come in and say, okay, I'm really working hard on this particular zip code, and I want to reach out to my past clients who are buyers. So they bought properties. Actually, they bought properties in this zip code, but then you could also say, but they also live in another zip code, right? So again, you can get real creative with this. So I want all the contacts who live in this zip code, but bought properties in this zip code within the last, again, let's just call it several years. These are pretty cool searches. I've got 22 contacts. I may want to export that list, send it off to my marketing team. I may want to send a batch email to all of these people and say, hey, I'm in your area. We just listed this house. You might be looking for a second home, what have you. Those are pretty cool things that you can do as an agent. Actually, it looks like you had a question about batch emails. We're on that screen now. Go ahead.
Yes. So with the batch emails, I know you mentioned earlier that we had to use or sign up using SendGrid. And we had to do that like outside and then kind of integrate and connect it with AFrame. So with the batch emails, are there templates that are available that are imported, or how does that work?
Okay, so I'm going to get on my soapbox a little bit to answer this question. But first of all, you can use any templates that you already have in the system, right? So you can create those emails ahead of time.
Okay.
And AFrame allows you, not only here, but in the templates area, to literally put in raw HTML code, right? So if you have some designer create some crazy email for you and you want to upload that here to AFrame, you can put in the raw HTML and go to town on any of that, right? So, but we're not, there were no way, shape, or form like MailChimp or Constant Contact. They have, $100 million market caps. They've got, 100 people working on these, and that is all they do is, how do we do these cool templates, these WYSIWYG drag and drop stuff? This is, that's not what we do, right? We're transaction management CRM company. But here's my soapbox to you. The prettier you make your emails, the less likely they are to read them. As an agent for over 20 years, we would spend good amount of money on making these emails look really pretty with all kinds of photos. Our clients couldn't delete those fast enough. The best emails you can write are the ones that look and feel like you wrote that to them. And when they're text and they're direct, those typically have the best hit rate, in my opinion. So take that or leave it. But yes, if you want to use our templates or want to use custom templates that you have the option to do it. But I would argue that a text email is going to hit so much better than some really crazy looking email that you've designed, just because they know it's spam immediately. They can't wait to
Yeah.
delete. So
So I guess what is SendGrid? If it's not templates,
yeah, so
like, do you know what I mean?
yeah. So okay, so SendGrid is as an email sending platform. And they actually do have some template stuff, but you would need to send the email within SendGrid itself. So it doesn't really have any benefit when you're talking about sending stuff through AFrame. But what does SendGrid do? So SendGrid, sending mass emails is hard, right? Like if you want to send an email to 1,000 people, you can't just go on to Gmail and send it to 1,000 people. It'll reject it, whatever. And then if you try to send it through some other service that maybe, let you do that, you're going to be flagged as spam immediately. And so what SendGrid does is somebody you log in with it, they verify your domain and they send those emails on your behalf in a way that allows them to get to those inboxes and not be flagged as spam.
Okay, makes sense.
Now, if you write an email that's spammy, all bets are off, right?
Yeah.
But that's what SendGrid does. It allows you to send more than, let's say, 200 emails at a time and not be flagged as just a huge spam sender. Because once you're blacklisted, it's darn near impossible to get off that blacklist.
Got it.
So anyway,
Makes sense.
good question though. Yeah, some people are confused by that. Okay, so again, that smart search, we talked about exporting that list. You can also import it to MailChimp in our deal. So we actually, if you use MailChimp, you can actually export a list into MailChimp directly, which might be kind of nice, right? Like I might come over here and search for all of my sphere and say, okay, I want to actually do a pretty email, which I just got done saying you never want to do that. So let's say I want to do a pretty email and I want to do it within my MailChimp account. I can actually export these to MailChimp, assuming you've made the connection in the back. And it will bring up all of my lists. I can go ahead and click that particular list, and then I can export that, right? So that will fire that into the MailChimp deal, and then you can go into MailChimp and start editing the email from there. But you would basically, all that allows you to do is export the emails and the contacts, and then you create the email and send it through MailChimp directly, right?
Are you working with other platforms like MailChimp, but for example, Flowdesk?
Um, Short answer is no. SendGrid was sort of our all-encompassing solution. It's just hard to write all of those API connections
Yeah.
direct to all of these different companies. There's no central way to do it. So I feel like one pops up every 6 months, right? So
Yeah, no, makes
short
sense.
answer is no on that. Okay, so let's move on. So final thoughts. This is if you're a TC, if you're an agent, obviously, whether you like it or not, you're in sales. I mean, it just is what it is, right? Day to day, you're doing transactions, but if you want to grow your business, you are in sales, right? You are a saleswoman, you are a salesman, and you need to start thinking of yourself that way, right? So I don't like prospecting. I hate prospecting, actually. But if you can put it in your weekly schedule, I mean, it could be daily, right? For agents, it has to be daily. For TCs, you might say, you know what, I'm going to carve out an hour of time on my slow day. What is that? Is that a Friday? Is that a Tuesday? Whatever that is. And I'm going to try to work through 10 to 20 agents that I think, I want to reach out to or set up, contact follow-up plans with. I think if you just say, okay, I'm going to carve this out and do that, you will reap rewards in spades, right? And some people fear prospecting, right? They don't want to ask for the business. But the couple, there are 2 points that I have down here, which one is always come from a place of how can I help, right? Like I'm just here to help you out. And if you don't want my help, totally cool. But I'm just asking the question, how can I help you out? And then another side note to that is if you're not helping them, because you usually think you're pretty good at what you do, or at least you should, they're probably getting poor service somewhere else. So that could be another motivator to you say, like, if they only knew what I could do for them, right? So I think coming at prospecting from that mindset is very helpful. And there's probably a third point about this is when it comes to prospecting, don't be salesy, right? As you start to reach out to these people, as you start to work your list, a phone call goes over, has 10x the amount of impact as a pretty email. In fact, I would argue maybe 1,000x. If you're brave enough to pick up that phone and call those agents on the other side, and certainly for an agent, you have to call, you're going to reap 10x, 100x, 1,000x rewards than just sending out a bunch of emails. Trust me, AFrame knows we've sent out a gajillion emails. And when we get on the phone, when we get on a webinar like this, when we get face to face in some capacity, the results are just, they don't even compare, right? But that's not to discourage you from at least sending out those emails, because doing something is better than obviously doing nothing. So the last little point I have is you don't have any excuses. AFrame has all of these features built in. They're here, they're ready for you to start using them. All you need to do is lean in, right? And say, okay, where am I going to start? The best way to start is get your contacts in, then you categorize them, and then you figure out how you want to reach out. Do you want to do it as a prospecting tool? Do you want to export that and fire off an email in some way? Or do you want to just go hardcore, go through the call list? Do that. But AFrame has all the tools for you to start. So there really aren't any excuses for you guys to get started. Okay, I'll ask for questions if anybody has any. I know we've covered a lot already, so I don't really expect there to be too many, but if anybody does have any questions, just let us know. So,
Yeah, this class was very useful. I was very excited to see it because I've tried the CRM in the past and I wasn't really fond of it, but there seems to be some recent updates that I just didn't know about. So I think this
yeah,
is exactly what we were looking for. And you said that you were going to post the 3 different task templates on the Facebook page just so we can pull them
yeah,
and use them since that part is brand new, which is really nice.
yeah, of
Um,
course.
and then do you know how much the send grid is
I mean, look, we can find out right now.
to integrate? I was just
Let's see.
kind of curious.
I think it's like 14, 19 a month. There is a free version, but I think you get to send out free trial, 100 emails a day for 60 days. And
Oh,
then the essentials, you could send out 50,000 a month if you wanted to.
that's overkill.
Yeah, but that's basically 20 bucks a month is how that
Yeah.
works.
So,
Yeah.
okay. So after 60 days, then you have to go to essentials. Okay. Well,
Yeah. But you might say, hey, look, I mean, I got the opportunity to send, for the next 2 months. So I could try
yeah.
it out with A-Frame, see how it works. Do I like it? Do I not? One thing that's key about A-Frame is if it does run into your limit, because obviously if you send out 500 emails and you
Hmm.
hit your limit on SendGrid, A-Frame will notice that, it will stop sending, and then it will queue the rest to be sent later. So,
Hmm.
um, so anyway, even if you reach
Nice.
your limit, A-Frame figures that out and adjusts accordingly. So yeah, 20 bucks a month is basically ultimately what it will be in the long run. So
Okay.
cool. Okay, well, guys, thanks. I mean, literally, right at an hour. So this was great. I appreciate all of your time. And as always, if you guys need anything, let us know. You can always reach us at support@aframesoftware.com. See you guys.
Thank you.